The first 10 seconds of every interview matter most.
On cam ready in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody, this is On Cam Ready. I'm Jamie Maglietta. I am offering tips to help you leverage your expertise and show up on camera confidently and more professionally online. But I also touch on my television news experience to help you with TV interviews, podcasts, and more. So let's get to it. Today, we are talking about interviewing and how that first 10 seconds really is what you need to sell that conversation, especially in podcasting and on YouTube and definitely on TV. So, what if I told you that producers decide if you're good in that first 10 seconds? I'm not kidding. It's true. If I have a guest on television and they're not really nailing it in those first 10 seconds, I start questioning why we booked this person. It even starts before they open their mouths on air, on camera. I'll get to that in another video because there's so many things I have seen behind the scenes that indicate if a guest is truly ready for their on-camera moment or not. So when you're producing high-profile interviews where the open is made and the segment is laid up with great information and details and stats and sound bites, you don't want to come out of that as a guest and fall flat. And if you're a podcast guest, you definitely don't want to sound low energy and boring in the first 10 seconds that you appear on the show. So I'm going to break this down into two different areas as the speaker and as the producer. What you want to do for those first 10 seconds to sell your podcast or to sell yourself if you're being interviewed. Okay. I have spent over 20 years in television broadcast news across MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News Channel. I bring my knowledge to these YouTube short videos that I am pouring into my channel to help you start leveraging that expertise and realize the new media space is where you need to be. All right. So, what I highly recommend you trying to do in these situations is think through what you want to say on camera before you show up. That starts days before. If you're being called in for breaking news, I hope that you have had TV before, training before, or if you haven't, ask the producer for some tips. You know, we can go into setups in another video, but if you're being booked last minute for some breaking news, definitely ask the booking producer for some ideas and tips and tricks to help you be so good in those first 10 seconds. So here we go. TV versus YouTube versus podcast all need a hook. So that's the similarity between them all. You need to start with energy, clarity, or emotion. And if you're the guest, you don't want to start with your resume. In a podcast setting, audio, YouTube, guest interviews, that is okay if they're not building you up in the intro and the audience is kind of meeting you for the first time. They don't know who you are. So it's fine. I do that with my podcast, Unknown to Known. However, in order to really sell what I have going on with my podcast, I use that first 10 seconds to play a soundbite from the conversation to lure people into what we're talking about. I picked the soundbite so it is curated to reflect the main theme or the most newsworthy bite from the chat. We could sit here and start, writing out an open in this video, but instead of doing that and being high production, I'm really trying to keep these low budget production short videos. So when I am preparing my podcast, which is Unknown to Known, I will go into ChatGPT and write up what I would like to talk about. I then go into my Google Drive and I start to create a folder, that folder for any guest interview. And I would do this for other networks too, but it wasn't in these tools. So I'd never used ChatGPT until I became an entrepreneur and left television news, by the way. But I do use it now because it's definitely helpful and it saves me so much time. So here's what I do. If I am going to let's start with if I am going to be a guest on a show. No, no. Let's start with if I am the talent or the producer. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to go into ChatGPT and I am going to ask ChatGPT what it can tell me about this guest, pulling from websites, articles, blogs, and I'll even give ChatGPT their social media handles and bio. Tell me what you can find on this person and what questions would be relevant to my show. By now, ChatGPT already knows what my show is. If ChatGPT doesn't know what your show is, you should give it a little description before you ask this question. I then say, give me a list of 10 questions that could be beneficial. From that, I'll say, okay, now I want you to go through websites and find stats, graphics, headlines that could be relevant to my conversation that I could weave into these questions. Okay. Then I craft out the questions from there and I rewrite in my voice and I lay it out so that we have a flow. And you want that flow to set your guest up so that they can be impactful within the first 5 minutes of your interview conversation. And that first question is always like a softball question if it's a podcast, YouTube show, and I'm doing a setup. Now, as that producer and the host, I'm then going back through and pulling a soundbite that could be the hook that I put off the top of the program. And that's how I get into my show. So I'm selling my show that way. I'm also helping sell the guest by creating questions that could help them be impactful. I'll sometimes say to them, I'm going to ask you this question off the top, and I really need it to be solid so that we can sell this show, this conversation. I'll give them like the first question sometimes in a podcast conversation. On television, I never did. We only have 5 minutes. Come prepared. As the guest, it's important that you know how you want to talk on camera, the person you want showing up on camera. You need to be that person. So if it's a sad story, you're not coming up happy. If it's an energetic topic, you're bringing it. If it's something you're passionate about, you're showing it. And within those first 10 seconds, you're delivering it. Okay. Now, I will get into this in another video, but it tells us a lot when you show up looking unprepared. So make sure you check out my video on what you need to do off camera to make your host comfortable with you being their guest. All right, we'll get to that soon. Remember, I have a visibility program coming out. Visit oncamready.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Jamie_Maglietta. I got to go because I am trying to keep these short and I'm losing my voice. All right, I'll talk to you soon. See you online. Check out my podcast, Unknown to Known.